So, but today's topic is on the research ethics. We are going to look at how we observe the ethics code when we conduct research. And most of what we will present here is mainly to show how in practice we give effect either to the policies or to the guidelines from the university. And I know that there are general guidelines that are there, even outside the universities. There are guidelines that organizations, most of the research organizations do have these guidelines. I serve in the SANBI Ethics Committee, and there they've got guidelines. So what we're going to look at today does not only pertain to academics, even applied research or any type of research that is also not necessarily for completing qualifications. The focus for the workshop is the cost and benefit ratio, informed consent, access and acceptance, consent where gatekeepers are involved. And I think if we can do the most, we can go as far as informed consent. The learning outcomes are that the participants should be able to demonstrate an understanding of the importance and place of the ethical dimension in conducting research for research professionalism and efficacy. They should also display a sensitivity and ability to apply basis for research ethics relative to human rights. But I also want to indicate that research ethics is not only relevant to human beings. It is also relevant to the natural environment, because you've got the living environment, which includes plants and animals. Today, I will even show you how you can impact on animals as well as on plants. Review, the participants should also be able to review research articles in order to demonstrate an understanding of validity and reliability and other related ethical issues in the research. They should be able to design and apply tools and techniques, including informed consent tools, ethics declarations, and research codes of ethics in research. My disclaimer is this to this workshop, that I have on several occasions received proposals or chapter 1 with a section on consideration of ethics. I always overlook that. I do not read, because I know that this subject is very straightforward. What is needed is only a declaration by the researcher that they will observe the ethics of conduct. Then you can summarize in your own way how you think you will, what ethics is. You demonstrate to the university that you understand the ethics of the code of conduct. And then you need to indicate how you will apply it when you go to the real settings, study setting. And on that basis, then you granted approval. If the committee, if the ethical committee of your college or the university is satisfied that indeed you are demonstrating that you will indeed observe the ethical code during research, then they grant you permission to go and conduct field work. So I don't see this subject as a difficult one, and therefore today we are doing it so that we can just mainly look at how practicalities in the field. And also it actually reminds us that it is not a minor subject, but it is simple and straightforward. But it might cause a lot of problems, because legal things matter a lot. Legal things are big things, because big things are legal things. Colleagues, research ethics should be reflected at 3 levels. This is my own writing. Does not come from any of the does not come from the any of the authors. Let me just show you the authors that I have consulted. Why did I skip them? Here they are. I did consult the policy from the University of South Africa. It is 35 pages. Then there's a document by the Austrian Federal Ministry of Education, Science and Research, 2020. There's a lot of documents on ethics and you can't finish them. You can't read all of them. Every day, if you go now, you can even find that there is a document that has been completed or written in 2025. You've got standard policies, but you've got policies that are customized per institutions. In addition, then the examples come from me, the studies at the catchment of Lake Funduzi, tourism framework for sustainable development in the catchment of Lake Funduzi. Thesis submission for the DTech, China University of Technology in Pretoria. And you will see that I recycle examples that I have because this is the only point of reference that I have because they speak to what I've done in the field. Otherwise, I should be saying to you, without even presenting slides, that I've experienced this in the field, then I can just recite the thing. But what I do is to take an excerpt from a specific statements or specific discussions from the research report to show that it is there. And if you go to the China University of Technology, you will find this report and you can go and look at it, how ethically the studies has actually complied with the ethics of code during the research process. So those were the documents or the resources that I've used in preparation for this workshop. But when I've done that, then in my mind, I said, you've got 3 areas where research ethics should be reflected. One, it is at the policy level, and this is the reason why I've got an example of the University of South Africa's policy to show that your university does have a policy and that when you are going to conduct research, they would want you to comply with that. And I do believe that any other guideline from your colleges should be based on the overall policy of the university. It can be customized. For an example, the policy should be generic and cover human beings and the natural environment, or animals and plants. But the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences would mainly be interested on the section that talks or makes reference to animals and plants. But colleges of humanities or people that are doing history, people that are doing social sciences would mainly be interested on how research affects human beings. So that is at the policy level. So every other organization does have this policy. I've told you about the South African National Biodiversity Institute, SANBI, that has got a policy that I know and which I am implementing as part of the committee. But there is the planning level. This is at the project planning, and planning is done by the researcher or the student, where you need to plan you must produce your research plan. And we have said that your planning for the research is done as part of the proposal. You remember, you've got a section that speaks to the methodology, and that is where you indicate how you're going to execute the research study. Sorry, the research or the study. And that is where planning takes place. And based on that, on your proposal, I said you would have a section that talks about the research ethics or ethical consideration. When you submit your research proposal for approval, part of it is going to be looked at by the ethics committee. they review what you have done so that they can give you a thumbs up. So it's after they've seen that you commit yourself to adhering to the ethical code of conduct during research. But at the implementation level, which is at the third level, it is, I've referred here to the project implementation. You implement project from the proposal or from the planning stage. And most of these is where you do field work and you collect data. That is where you would come across research participants. So, and the test is here. And here in the field, the university does not see you. The study leader does not see you unless if they accompany you to assist you or to supervise you in the field. And only where other people can see what you are doing is mainly if there are research teams or data is collected by more than one people, one individuals. So they can see if you are impacting on the rights of people or on the rights of plants or animals. So how you are going to behave in the field, whether you impact or don't impact, or you respect the rights of the research participants, will only be reflected by you when you document it under the research methodology, your chapter 3 or your chapter 4. And this is the reason why I said, when you go to the field and you start gaining entry, you have started collecting data. And that is where I've said you start taking notes, because you will eventually indicate how you have conducted research. And there, the university wants you to demonstrate that you actually did observe the ethics code in research. So whether you're analyzing data or you're collecting data or you're taking notes or you are gaining entry following that Shivenda protocol or that protocol that the municipality wants you to follow, or the civic or any other gatekeeper, the extent to which you adhere to that, you are actually trending in the area of the ethics. This is what they refer to as ontology. And Nomfes made reference to it on Tuesday. So how we do it today, you are going to see how what authors say about it, and then I would try to show why what I did and what I came across and what the experience is, so we can engage based on that. But because research is conducted by, for, and about people, there's always the potential to harm others. And this is the reason why we are required to commit that we will not harm them. And I've already told you that it's not only the others in terms of human beings that you can harm. You can harm plants, you can harm animals. So the natural scientist would also be very cognizant of complying with the ethics when they conduct research in the natural environment. For this reason, all researchers need to think about ethical issues. We need to consider a number of questions, such as how should we conduct research so as not to hurt others and the natural environment? What kinds of relationships should we attempt to create with our research subjects? You will see later on, I would demonstrate to you the type of relationships that I had with research, with the research participants. And I think you might have seen, I think from last week when we dealt with participatory action research, how I related to the research participants, that I did not see them as research participants, by the way, because I established research teams. I saw them as co-researchers. I will again repeat it in future slides. So that is in terms of the relationship. So even if you have got, even if it were animals or plants, you do relate to plants, you do relate to animals. And we will talk about that a little bit later. What kinds of power relations are there between those who are doing the research and those who are being researched? It's very important. And in participatory action research, by the way, the examples that we are going to show today are from participatory action research. And there you would see how the researcher either ignored or did observe the ethics code of conduct, ethical code of conduct during collecting data or gaining entry. Then the other question is, who benefits from the research? Is it only you who is conducting research, or it is also those people that are participating who appear to be the researched? But who should benefit? Is it everybody? Is it one of us, those people that are involved in research? We've got the researcher, we've got the people whose setting is part and parcel of the research process. Who? Then let's have it in our mind when I pause so that we can answer who should benefit and who in most cases does benefit. Let's argue about that. And the slides that you see in front of you here is actually to show you that it's not only human beings that are affected. And I've said that the natural environment is affected. And the two living part of the environment are plants and animals. I've got an example of a lion and one of the plants here, Mimosa pudica. And with the lion, I want to indicate to you that the lion is sensitive to touch. It feels pain if you pierce you use a needle to pierce the skin of a lion. The lion feels pain. If you beat a lion, it feels pain. If you shoot it, it dies. It bleeds when wounded. When you shoot it, I used to work with animals, and sometimes we are allowed to reduce the population of animals. And the manner in which we do it, we cull them. Culling is an official and a scientific approach to managing the population of animals. Then we shoot them, and there is a way in which we are allowed to eliminate, to reduce the numbers. You cannot do it in a way that they suffer the pain. No, so using guns, rifles, you kill them instantly, so they would not suffer for a long time feeling the pain. You must shoot on the correct spot so that you reduce the pain. So that is managing the harm, and this is the harm that has to do with the ethics. Then ethically, in other words, if you are not wanting to take 20 minutes to kill an animal, you are not subjecting this animal to a torture. You're not tormenting it. Therefore, ethically, you feel guilty if you continue to inflict endless pain. But if you instantly kill it, then the pain is managed and reduced. When you cage it, you infringe on its right. We have got policies. The government does have policies under the departments of environment or the conservation authorities, the parastatals and the provincial organizations in South Africa. They've got policies on how you can cage animals or how you can house animals in enclosures. You've got the zoos, Pretoria Zoo, Johannesburg Zoo, they contain animals, but they follow strict guidelines and regulations that when you cage them, you must be able to feed them, that you must not treat them like human beings. So all of this has to do with ethics. The same applies to plants. We don't have good science to see that plants do feel pain, because if you cut a plant now, the only thing that you will see is that the branch will fall down or the fruit will fall down. But when you go back tomorrow, you find that leaves have started to dry up, or the branch starts to dry up so that you can use as fuel wood. But immediately you cut it, it would not reflect. But there are the specific plant that I'm showing you here, which is Mimosa pudica. And I think people that have studied general science, like us in olden days, 1970s, general science books cited the Mimosa pudica as one of the plants. And some of the insectivorous plants are also respective and sensitive to touch. And when insects sit on them, then they react by actually covering the plants and covering the insects, and they feed on them. This is mainly because they are sensitive. But Mimosa pudica, when you touch it, the leaves are sensitive and they shrink, they sleep. When you touch the leaves, they sleep, but when you are away, they open up. So it reacts to the external stimuli. And this is what science tells us. When you cut, you infringe on its right. And there are plants that exude latex, or plants that produce latex, or they've got this milky juice, particularly the euphorbia plants. When you cut them, they've got this milky latex, milky liquid that comes from the branches or the leaves when they are plucked out. So this is a result of this is a sign and a reaction from the plant that you've cut me. Maybe that is the blood from the plant. In the way that you ooze, your blood oozes when you are cut. So some of the plants will also exude milky stuff. Then this is the reason why we are required to be ethical when we deal with plants. And you will tell me that maybe the plant would not feel pain and nobody can tell you if it is feeling pain or not. But the extent to which we destroy plants determines their future and their future availability. And we know that we depend on plants on various uses. They are resources and we survive, we depend on them. When you don't have fuel wood, you must depend on electricity, whose tariffs is very, very high. Electricity is so expensive. And by the way, electricity is also dependent on fossil fuel. And that fossil fuel, the majority of it was organic matter. It was plants that died and were buried for years. Then they turned into coal. So that is the story about the living environment and the ethics. So UNISA Reserve talks about animals and plants in its policies. And I think natural scientists do know that they are advised on how to observe ethics when they deal with the natural environment. The awareness of ethical concerns in research is reflected in the growth of relevant literature and in the appearance of the regulatory codes of research practice formulated by various agencies and professional bodies, as well as universities, including the University of South Africa. A major ethical dilemma is that which requires researchers to strike a balance between the demands placed on them as professional scientists in pursuit of truth and their subject rights and values potentially threatened by their research. You, as a researcher, are required to comply with specific codes, but you also want to make sure that you collect data or you write your reports in a way that it will actually assist you to achieve the objectives of the study. And if you do so and you demonstrate that you do it with diligence, then you're going to be awarded a degree or a certificate. But on the other hand, while you pursue your own objectives, the objectives and the interest of the participants, people who are being researched or animals that are being researched, their interest should also be protected. So you sit in the middle. That is why the author refers it as a dilemma. Can you balance it? Can you achieve your objectives and achieve the objectives of the researched? Or you are going to be biased towards yours? Or if you start respecting the subject's interest, are you going to lose the direction and fail to achieve your objectives? That is the question that you must answer as a researcher. And this is what you need to adapt. You need to develop strategies to be able to achieve your objectives and also protect the interest of those who are part and parcel of your research. And this we refer to as cost and benefit ratio. And we've got one of the sub-themes of this workshop as the cost benefit ratio. We would look at that and how it should happen and what authors say and what principles we should observe and how we need to implement them then is based on us and the recommendations that the majority of authors make to us. Ethical problems for researchers can multiply surprisingly when they move from the general to the particular and from the abstract to the concrete. What it means is you've got general principles that are there that all the researchers need to observe, and you've got policies that are there that are not yet implemented that borrow from the general principles of ethics, but which must be translated into action when you go to the field and when you implement the project. Data collection, that is where implementation is. That is from the general to the concrete. Ethical issues may stem from the kinds of problems investigated by social scientists and the methods they use to obtain valid and reliable data. This means that each stage in research consequence raises ethical issues. Ethical issues may arise from the following. For an example, the nature of the research project itself, ethnic differences in intelligence. For an example, this is just an example from an author. The context for the research, the remand home, I don't know what this is, the procedures to be adopted, producing high levels of anxiety, as an example, methods of data collection, such as covert observation. And here, covert means that there is somewhere where you conduct research, but you must not divulge that you're conducting research. And you must remember, in terms of the ethics code of conduct in research, you must declare that you are conducting research and for which purpose. People must ask you what they will benefit by participating. That is a general principle. But there are other researchers, and you have made it in these workshops, that in some instances, it is not necessary to reveal and to divulge, because we'll be investigating very sensitive topics, such as dealing with the drug dealers. You don't want them to know that, although you would, you see, it's difficult to declare to everybody that you are actually researching drug dealers. Because people start being suspicious or feeling somehow, or the drug dealers themselves start feeling uncomfortable. I want us to discuss this because we touched it, and it was yourselves who started it, saying that it's not every time that you have to declare, but what do we say? Because it's ethically wrong not to declare. Somebody said, if you are investigating fraud and you find that people are involved in fraud, should you then expose them and take them so that they can be arrested? Then we said no, because you have got a declaration that you would not expose anybody, or your studies is unanimous, therefore you don't report them. You told me that. So you understand the ethics. That is what is referred to here in the last statement. But ethical issues may, this is a further continuation of instances where ethical issues may arise. The nature of the participants, emotionally disturbed adolescents, or the drug dealers. The type of data collected, highly personal and sensitive information. You cannot divulge my information. If I've told you things about myself, my personal life, you cannot disclose it to anybody. So what do you do? Because we want to know what you've done. Are you going to disclose or to hide some of the information that you got, or the way in which you collected data? What is to be done with the data? Do you publish and even make names known? I have, in last week, I said the names of the research teams are contained in my research report. And we know that there is a general principle that people that have provided information remain anonymous. But other authors have argued that you need to acknowledge the contributors to the research findings. And how do you do it? Is by acknowledging them, either in your introductory section of the research. When you put acknowledgements, you can even acknowledge people that have provided data to you, assisted you in achieving the qualification, people that have been gatekeepers and they were good. But what about the research participants themselves? I have written them and listed their names, and it is for a good cause. Therefore, there is no offense in that one. This is just an example. Now, Here is an example that the authors did not cite, and which I know from my personal experience. In the catchment of Lake Funduzi, I was collecting data, and this is what they told me, and this is what the participants reported to the researcher, in other words. And they said, they were talking about sacred forests. They said, they actually, participants identified the Chama Fambe Sacred Forest located at Chungan ward of Chiheni as a potential tourist resource that has to date remained completely untapped for tourism development. Nonetheless, the Chungan Sacred Forest is associated with taboos that prohibit access and the collection of forest products by commoners, but required the carrying out of rituals by the royal family of Chungan clan. What this means is that a person who is not from the royal clan of Chungan do not access this sacred forest and just behave as they wish, such as collection of firewood. But the family itself, the royal family, has got an obligation where they carry rituals in that forest, and they've got specific protocol to follow, and the rituals are prescribed to them. So it is a requirement. Ethically, they must do that. But a commoner and a foreigner cannot just go there and do those things. Even if they want to do it, they're not allowed because they are not from the royal family. Look what example they cited. They say, at one stage, a woman who visited Chieni happened to collect marula fruits at the edge of Chungani Sacred Forest. This is the sacred forest that does not allow commoners or foreigners to invade. But when this woman arrived at the house she was visiting, the marula fruits changed into snakes. But after investigation, it was found that the marula fruits had been collected from the sacred place by this woman. When the marula fruits were returned to the sacred forest upon instructions from the elders, the snakes disappeared. Now you could see that the lady did not comply with the ethical code of conduct. She did not actually respect the Chivenda custom or the Chivenda ethics, that if you are not from the royal family, you don't collect firewood, you don't collect field products from the sacred forest. She did so, then she came across challenges because her fruits turned into snakes. Only then when they were returned, she returned the fruits, they turned back, the snakes disappeared. You can see that culture, this is a very significant protocol in terms of the Chivenda culture. Now, each research undertaking is an event on its own when it comes to the resolution of a specific problem, a moral problem. Each situation frequently offers a spectrum of possibilities, and there it is dependent on the researcher herself or himself how he behaves ethically when he's conducting or she's conducting research. It's either that he will win or succeed. The case of the marula tree and the collection of the fruits is just one example. You will see later on that when you actually don't follow protocol, then you don't gain the favors of those people who should accept you. And ethically, when they see that you're wrong, they would not accept you to the field, and you would then be turned away. But when you comply with the specific protocols, then you gain entrance, you are allowed to conduct research, then you can achieve the objectives of your research. There is a new policy dated 2024. So it means I am supported, but the one that I've used is outdated. So these documents will be written from time to time, will be revised to cover new ethical consideration or to improve the way in which they are written as a guideline to assist students. Thank you very much. And this is Nomhle that has written like that.
Colleagues, so this year UNISA went online using the OREMS, and well, I don't want to say it was easy, purely through curiosity and probably serendipity. In January, as my research proposal was being reviewed, then then we had a discussion with my supervisor, and he said, no, whenever you are ready, just apply for the ethical clearance. And by that time, I think in December, he had sent me the Word document, because last year it was the Word document. So I just randomly searched, and then I landed on that website. And then I started, going through populating self-taught, trial and error, and uploading everything that was required. It wasn't an easy journey, I must say, because specifically my college, or should I say the department, DASE, only went online in March. So my application, I think it took probably 2 weeks. I'd work on a few things, a couple of hours during the day, and then I'll just leave it out. It's very intensive. It's as if you are doing a proposal again. And then I submitted early February, and there was this long wait. In March, that's when our college went live. And then we had to wait for all the supervisors to go for training. So once that was done, still it was a bit difficult because, sometimes, especially for people born before technology, the BBTs, it becomes difficult to adjust because everything is done online. So there has to be this filtering, like checking if you've submitted all the required documents. And then after that, it will be allocated to a respective a couple of supervisors, because there's a primary and a secondary one. And then afterwards, it will be, they will review, and then there'll be the combination of reviewers. So there has to be a document where both reviewers collate the information, and then once that is done, then it gets set for the table. I always advise people that each department, they usually circulate their dates. So there will be a submission date and then a committee date. So it doesn't necessarily mean that if maybe the submission date is the 31st of July, your application will be viewed at the sitting of the committee in 2 weeks' time. No, because there's filtering that still needs to be done. So the whole process took. I received conditional approval in April, just to modify the need for a statistician and to include South Africa in my study. And it took another 3 weeks to actually get a response from them and get an approval. So after this experience and even sharing with my other colleagues, I always mention that rather speak to your supervisor, collaborate, negotiate. If you could start with the ethical clearance immediately after the proposal section, because if you wait till chapter 3 and roughly you wait another 3 months, like I know some colleges, there's a bit of a backlog. So imagine after chapter 3, then you have to wait for 3 months for approval, minimum 3 months. And with research, you can't, they can't backdate. Some gatekeepers, they want the actual ethics, and we also have to think about the integrity of our degrees. So we can't, just do the under carpet research. We have to do the right thing. So that is my story and my advice as well. As soon as you are done, please apply, so that by the time you are done with chapter 3, you are ready and good for data collection. And this is where I am right now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Nomhle. Actually, I'm very happy to hear what you are saying, and I wanted everybody to say to do it. Now, apart from what you see, this is a gap in me because I did not study at UNISA. I studied in other universities. I've got a half degree from the University of South Africa in communications and social sciences. I did not finish. So I never got to do a research where I were to be subjected to an ethical protocol, ethical clearance protocol of the university. So I could not make this example. This example can only be made by yourselves. And when you fear to come on platform here, then there is a gap in the workshop. Now, I want to encourage you something. There are people that are working with within research organizations or research institutions. You will find that those institutions also do have a protocol that has to be followed, because when they have to commission projects, the people who are proposing projects also have to demonstrate that they considered the ethics of conducting research within that their role and their responsibilities. So each organization should have a protocol to subject a project in terms of the ethical clearance. And I wanted a share not only from the UNISA's experience. I'm pleased with what Nomhle has done, but people that are working, the majority of you are working, and you work for organizations, and a lot of organizations have got a research unit. Now, those people who understand these things, please don't be shy to share with us. The gap that I have, and I've been reminded by this comment by Nomhle, is that I should have looked at the ethical protocol that SANBI subjects its projects to. Then I could share with you what they do. As an example of a live and an organization that is there, because that is going to be applied research, because they do it not only for theoretical purposes. They want to solve real biodiversity management and conservation issues. So colleagues, I'm going to continue. And we're looking at the cost and benefits ratio of ethics. The costs and benefits, the cost benefits ratio is a fundamental concept expressing the primary ethical dilemma in social research. In earlier slides, I said the dilemma is that you protect your interest and the interest of the others. Now, what is the trade-off in here, and what should a researcher do? In planning their proposed research, social scientists have to consider the likely social benefits of their endeavors against the personal costs to the individuals taking part. Your animals, the people that are actually going to participate in the research process will be affected. They might be affected negatively or positively. So we have to consider what they will benefit and what they will lose in the process of taking research. And there are various ways in which they lose, and there are ways in which they can benefit. Those are the important considerations by the researcher. Now, I must tell you that when most researchers are conducting their projects, it is not very clear that the participants will benefit. Because I think it's not that they are not encouraged by the universities or their organizations to observe the ethics protocol. No, the challenge is that what you read is not what happens in the field. As we have heard that in the field, you are in the real world. It's not like what you write or like what you know or what you have heard. It's what must be implemented or exercised in actual fact. So people do forget, or sometimes they don't remember, or they ignore what they've undertaken to do. So they then tread and walk and trample on, they then disregard the rights and the interest of the people that are involved, or the animals and plants that are involved. Possible benefits accruing from the research may take the form of crucial findings leading to significant advances in theoretical and applied knowledge. You can conduct research that can assist in solving the present problem that is faced by the community or the animals that are participating in part and parcel of your research. Or you can contribute to the theory or to the body of knowledge. Most of you, when you have completed your studies, you would be interested on publishing a paper, or for the PhD, it is mandatory either to publish 1 or 2 articles, or to even communicate your findings in workshops internationally. You can attend conferences nationally, you can attend conference or facilitate meetings. So you would communicate. So when you do that, you are contributing theoretically, so to the body of knowledge. But in applied science, you can assist, you can investigate conditions under which animals are stressed when they're caged, so that you can make recommendations on how those can be improved. That when they meet, when there's a lot of people that are meeting or coming across these animals that are put in the cage. Remember, animals are used to staying in the bush where there are no people. And when people come there in great numbers, they impact on their health and then they develop stress. So such research can assist you in improving the real conditions under which these animals are kept. The same applies to human beings. There was yesterday, I've just listened to SAFM saying that there's a studies do indicate that in Gauteng hospitals, a lot of people who were hospitalized were affected in some way or another. And it was worrisome. And I think it was the DA, the political party, that was worrying that now people are hospitalized so that they can be treated. But when they are hospitalized, then they are infected. Then instead of them being treated, additional complications because of new diseases that are introduced. You see now, you can conduct such research that what are the conditions, the status of our hospitals. You'll find that the environment, the health status has deteriorated. Maybe the hospitals are not refurbished, or those chemicals that must be used to treat the environment are not used, or the hospital does not have the budget to actually maintain and ensure cleanliness. So you can conduct a study and make recommendations on how the conditions can be improved. That is applied research and applied knowledge. So in that way, you ethically contributing to the lives and to the benefits of those people who you are researching. Failure to do the research may cost society the advantages of the research findings and ultimately the opportunity to improve the human conditions, because you conduct, particularly in applied research, participatory action research demonstrates that one. And this slide that you see here in front of you, I put a heading there, consideration of likely social benefits during planning. And this is what I wrote before I went to the field. And participatory action research and its developmental role is what is contained in chapter 1, where I was still proposing the research. And what you are going to see now is from chapter 4, which contains a lot of planning for the research project. Chapter 4 has got the section on methodology. Actually, is entirely on the research project, the research plan, or the research methodology. Now, the statement is like this. The use of participatory action research, which is a qualitative methodology, was selected because this method suggests a participative and bottom-up approach. It was hoped that this methodology would render the most valuable development assistance to the rural community of the catchment of Lake Mfunduzi, which is a community living in third world conditions. Now, you see now, this is what is happening in planning. Now, the author is saying we can consider the benefits of implementing our projects. Even before we can go to the field, then we make sure that the way the project the project is implemented, by default, it includes consideration and observance of the ethical code of conduct in research. So in that way, by design, it will be simple for you to observe the ethics code in research if you actually follow what you have, if you follow the design of your study. So this design was structured or was designed, this study was designed in a way that it is ethically sensitive and it can positively contribute to the empowerment and social upliftment. That is what has happened in one of the studies. And it continues to say, it talks about the benefits now. Let's hear what type of benefits we thought people would get. While working in the catchment where tourism development is still at the early stages of development, and where it can be said that the community needed empowerment and sense of self-actualization, participatory action research was used in order to achieve two motives. First, it was used to assist the community in the emergence process of collaboration, mobilization, empowerment, self-actualization, establishment of community solidarity. Now, you would remember that here we're talking about what is the cost and what is the benefit to the researcher and to the community. So the design itself, participatory action research, is meant even to empower the community to actually develop them. That is why reference is made here to the emergence process of collaboration, when there is cooperation between the researcher and the research participants and amongst the research participants themselves. The mobilization, empowerment, which ensures that these people can be independent and they can realize, improve self-esteem, self-realization, and the establishment of community solidarity. So this is what was planned to contribute to the benefits and to the positive contribution of the research. So this is in planning, and we can do so even before we can go to the field. And later on, the only thing is that today I did not bring good results that showed that at the end of the study, these people were found to have been empowered, but it was based on how planning was done. Secondly, it was used to develop transferable skills and lateral critical, analytical, creative, and innovative thinking needed for the development of the community. Now, we have said a lot about collaboration, transferable skills, lateral, critical, analytical, skills that were not there when the researcher enters the research context. But when the researcher leaves out, he anticipates that this is what would be left with communities. So there would be change. And this is based on the transformative paradigm. Nomhle was talking about the paradigms in terms of mixed method research. So here, the paradigm of transformative was at play. Because change, it brings change, it has to do with social justice and changes into the lives of the people. So here, communities were going to be empowered so that they move from the less empowered to the empowered, and they could then take action on themselves. Owing to the rich cultural heritage of Lake Mfundudzi, now opportunities of these findings could be missed if the project was not undertaken. Now, look at what would be missed in terms of the interpretation from the researcher. Owing to the rich cultural heritage of Lake Mfundudzi catchment, cultural tourism has emerged as the most preferred experience of the to be offered. In addition, the mountainous nature of the landscape, the abundance of water resources, and the rich biological diversity equally support the development of adventure tourism and ecotourism, which would act as business in the local, so that you can enhance and advance the economic activities in the area for the development of the people. Social and economic development. Supported by the minor infrastructure development, tourism experiences could be dispersed to all villages in accordance with the distribution of potential tourism resources. This statement or this discussion is part and parcel of interpretation and under the data analysis section at the end of the study. and it was the basis of the recommendation on what type of tourism should be developed. And that has been presented by research teams on what should be developed. And they based it on these findings. So you could see that at the end of the study, this is what has been realized. Because indeed, together with the research teams, this has been investigated. Potential tourism resources have been investigated to an extent that their contribution to social and economic development has become evident. And remember what we write here, we base on the contribution by the research participants. So this study could indeed, contribute to social and economic development if indeed those research teams could implement the findings, because out of the findings, they develop action plans. And if they had implemented them, the empowerment has resulted. So in other words, ethically, there has been a very positive contribution by the research. You can read this report from Tshwane University of Technology. So this was in terms of the economics. Now, the other dimension now, this is the first dimension that we're going to demonstrate, particularly on how the people would develop. And these dimensions, I'm mentioning them because my research had specific dimensions to address. There are three. The economic type, the economics of tourism, which means economic activities that would contribute to the development of the people. And this is one of the objectives that I wanted to achieve through the study. So not only for myself, so we should also realize that we should take into account that if I achieved those, then it means local communities would also develop would also benefit from them. The second one is the social one. The third one is the environmental one. So let's read the first dimension. From the study, it has been found that the study site lacks tourism business that could meet the needs of tourists. Based on this state of affairs, it has been argued that secondary business should be expanded in order to close this eminent gap. Accordingly, secondary business would benefit from government grants that support local economic development. So the first dimension of sustainability is the financial part or the economic dimension of the research object of the tourism development. And this has been identified as part and parcel of the of one of the objectives to be achieved. One objective is to achieve to contribute to social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So this is the economic dimension. Second dimension of sustainability, the current report reveals the existence of minor safety and security as well as health problems that might deter tourists from the catchment. However, it also emerged that these challenges can be contained if local security and health institutions were enhanced. Were to enhance their management capacity by integrating traditional and modern technology into the system. Traditional modern technology of managing health, because health has been found to be a security threat to the tourists. And therefore, it means that we need to manage it if we want to encourage tourism so that we can have this economic development. So, but if we do that, it means we are actually contributing to the development of the community. But when you enhance and promote the health in the catchment or in the area where research has been conducted, you're not only improving the health of the tourists, you're improving the health of the people that reside in the area. So this is one of the social benefits of the research. So ethically, the research itself could have contributed to the social development, to the improvement of health of the local community. So including the health of the people that will visit the area. If people know that there is malaria in an area and it is not controlled, then they will not visit it. But if it is not there, they will visit it. But when we control it, as I've said, we also assist the people that stay there because they will not be affected by malaria anymore. Now, the third pillar or dimension where the contribution with the ethics in terms of observing ethics, you then contribute to development. Then this is in terms of the environment. 4 such teams have been established in order to involve the local community towards the development of tourism frameworks by means of participatory action research as the research methodology. The findings of this study confirmed that the catchment of Lake Mfunduzi is rich in cultural and natural resources. The cultural resources and the natural resources that can be used towards the development of tourism, apart from postulating that tourism developments will likely affect the natural environment negatively. And I told you that the natural environment includes the animals and the plants that are there. Then it means we are now taking ethical consideration in terms of harming our animals and our plants. But the studies did found that tourism development would impact on the natural environment negatively. But apart from that, the study also suggested that tourism resources are already threatened by different land uses in the catchment. So this then highlights to the authorities, the conservation organizations, to the traditional leaders, to the civic organizations, anybody interested on development, basing it on the natural and the cultural resources would feel affected. And this is the reason why at the end of the study, there is a specific recommendation on how the natural environment and the cultural environment should be managed to ensure that it is protected. Animals are not hurt, plants are not, do not disappear. We don't find fires that destroy and damage, or we don't find people clearing the vegetation for purposes of doing tourism. But when they do tourism development, they take into account the need to protect the natural environment, including animals and plants, so that even in future, they can continue to depend on them for tourism development. That is in terms of the ethics. If you consider your ethics, then you benefit because you sustain, you will continue to use what you have because you will not destroy. But the cost to participants may include affronts to dignity, embarrassment, loss of trust in social relations, loss of autonomy and self-determination, and lowered self-esteem. That is in terms of people. On the other hand, the benefits to participants, apart from the negative impacts, but if there are benefits, those benefits could take the form of satisfaction in having made a contribution to the science and greater personal understanding of the research area under scrutiny, or greater understanding of the research focus. Because if it is about tourism, people will understand what tourism is and what they can do to promote economic development through tourism. So they would have understood that and they would benefit if they eventually use the knowledge and the understanding from the research. Researcher, please mute. The process of balancing benefits against possible costs is chiefly a subjective one and not at all easy because it depends on the researcher. Subjective means that the attitude, the approach, and what the researcher does is what would constitute a breach of the ethics or observance of the ethical code of conduct. So it is subjective in that it is dependent on you. There are few or no absolutes, and researchers have to make decisions about research content and procedures in accordance with professional and personal values. This is dependent on your worldview. So I like dealing with human beings and I like empowering people. This is the reason why I then chose participatory action research, so that it will assist me in actually observing my ethics and in facilitating development. In which case, if I succeed, empowerment would have contributed to good ethical contribution. So everybody has got his own way of doing it, and people let us do it in terms of how we understand research, on how we need to see others benefit. The way that I like to be treated should be the way that I treat others. Now, let us see how we can acknowledge how people can benefit and can see that they benefited. And this slide says activities to contribute to personal satisfaction of research participants, all after gaining access Now, in participatory mapping, I told you at GNE, there were research participants of the research team that rejected printed maps. Although those printed maps were developed by some of the participants in an earlier research in the very same setting. But the new research team said, no, we cannot use those maps. In that way, when they actually convinced the researcher or encouraged the researcher to stop using the printed maps. And the interaction resulted at the research teams winning. And at the end of the day, the research teams is the one that enjoyed producing maps, which if they go to the University of China University of Technology, they find these maps there. They've been drawn by them. And when they see their name appearing in that report, then people would know when we talk about the teams that have developed these maps, it is those teams whose names appear in the report. So these people continued to do maps and they won. They were enjoying it. And it was easy for them when they went to do transect works. It was them dictating which route to take. So they could contribute in various ways. And this one makes them feel that they are acknowledged and that they've contributed to the success of the study. So ethically, this is very, very important because you don't undermine the integrity and the extent to which these guys could do the work. And if you remember, I said these research teams were the ones who were capturing the notes. They were capturing the discussions, everything. And I even showed you their handwritten notes that they've written in that way. Now, if one of them could find us running workshops and they see their handwritten slides, they're going to be very happy. So that is how you can acknowledge them. And this is how ethically you then contribute to their self-esteem. And then they feel, oh, I am acknowledged. So it's a positive contribution. And this is one of the maps that they've developed. This is the Chifume village map. So it is their contribution. And they feel acknowledged when they see that we eventually use what they have. Okay, let us stop here now. We have dealt with the cost and benefits. And let me hear if you have got something to comment on about the cost and benefits. Your experience on this is very important. Your acceptance and your disagreement with what is presented here. The examples that I've presented, if you don't agree with them, you can say what you want to say. If you don't agree with the theory, how the author describes the concept or any motivation or guidelines that they present here. And if you think they are contrary to what your university requires you to do, or if you think it is so difficult, let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. I said this is a very simple subject, but it's a very difficult concept to implement in the field. It's good to read and to study, but it's also difficult to follow, to comply and to get ethical clearance from the University of South Africa. I've heard it even before when I was in another university. Then I did hear that at UNISA it was very, very difficult because you have to undergo this long protocol. Other universities, I've never been subjected to that thing. My clearance, my ethical clearance was very, very fast, and it was a very short and very straightforward process.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate Nomhle's comments as well. I also find that the scientific review process is quite a process. Unfortunately, because of the Turnitin requirement for annual refresh, I've had to now wait for Turnitin 2025 to be uploaded and resubmit my chapters before I go for scientific review. So I didn't really have much to say because I haven't finished the process. But I can say that it has taken me a while to get where I am now.
I will tell you what I come across here when I look at your research proposals and your chapters. I drilled. Okay, there was one master's student whose work I drilled. I went to the literature. She had chapters 1, 2, 3. then I did a lot even on the literature chapter, or that is chapter 2. Then I comment on how she should write, even writing, making examples. I'm not a very good author because I write long, or I didn't publish a lot, but I did write. I've completed a lot of research projects, particularly for academic purposes. Now, when I've done that, she said, but my supervisors don't go further as far as that. They only would advise you in terms of spelling. When they do that, you still have a challenge with the Turnitin. And ethically, you're going to be challenged. So you are not going to get an automatic approval. But to facilitate approval, these are the notes that the study leaders need to tighten. And that is their professional. It's not my profession. Okay, of course, I must aspire to be like them and to support you like them. And this is the reason why anything that I comment on your document is based on literature. Sometimes I even used, there are some instances where I have overused Creswell and Creswell 2018, and I think I must use the recent one now. And now, when I was trying to guide people on how to discuss, to structure the methodology section or chapter. So, because I wanted to make sure that these people do understand and they can defend what is written by the use of literature. And this is what the extent to which I think study leaders should do, because they are solely employed to improve the development of the students. And if they don't do this and they allow you to fall into the trap, it's a very bad experience. It's not a good one. Thank you very much. Let us continue. And we want to look at informed consent. I don't know if this is what I did not include in the study focus, but participants should be seen as indispensable and worthy partners in research. Researchers should respect and protect the rights and interests of participants at every stage and level of research and acknowledge their contribution. As in the development of the maps, selection of participants should be done fairly. Now we want to see, and in the next slides, the examples how in some cases participants were selected. If we want to say it is fair, we must say it is fair. If it is unfair, let's also not be, let's not hide it. Let's suggest what we think should have been done and should have been a fair process of actually involving or selecting them. Now, it reads like this. As the study site was located in a rural setting where records did not exist, a sampling frame, not a framework, here is an error. A sampling frame was generated, and with the involvement of the community, the development of sampling frame and final selection. You see, we're talking about first selection here, but the final selection of the research team members was a public consultative process, which eliminated the element of bias. So we did not choose people in accordance with the to actually serve the interest of the researcher only. So now here is just a demonstration that the researcher himself did not decide on who should participate in the research process. It was a public consultation. But all of this did happen when the researcher was gaining entry. So when he went there, and he made the research objectives clear and how he thinks the community or the stakeholders could participate, it resulted in this fair process of deciding who should participate. And remember, it means the stakeholders or the community itself is selecting itself or people amongst themselves. There is no way that this could be ethical and affect the way the ethics of the researcher. It has given, actually, the researcher was very lucky because these people grabbed it and ran it with it. But it should depend on how the researcher has approached the research setting, particularly during gaining entry. The first selection continues. It says, when detecting, this is when we were deciding on the study population. When determining the group or subpopulation, it was necessary to note that this population should be encompassed be composed of people who would understand the subject of tourism development. Essentially, such people had to be or to have entrepreneurial skills, development facilitation skills, and skills related to tourism development. Furthermore, the group had to comprise of leaders, landowners, land users, and resource managers, and had to be balanced in terms of demographic makeups. Above all, the group should be composed of people who reside within the study site. Now, here is to indicate that the inclusion and exclusion criteria was made clear so that there is an element of representation in terms of demographics, and to ensure that tourism development is researched and is investigated from a number of dimensions, and that by triangulating, making sure that different sources of information is considered. If you look at age, different age groupings, so it is different sources, it's not the same age. You look at gender, then it means it's also not the same gender. So that is triangulation, and is the extent to which bias is also managed. But this is the criteria that has ensured that people were selected fairly, that it is in terms of their contribution and the extent to which they will be affected by the research project. So there's been a fair election, and that is very important in terms of the research ethics. And this is just a continuation of the listing of all the criteria, and the reason why this criteria was important. In front of the criteria that I've put down, I've numbered them, then I indicate why it was important. For an example, if you look at criteria number 4, which is resource management, it would say this criterion was selected based on the evidence from literature that it forms part of environmental pillar of tourism sustainability. Because if you don't manage the resources, then it means that the resources would be damaged through tourism development. This is the reason why, as one of the dimensions that I spoke about, that it was considered and a contribution was made at the end of the study, that resource management should be taken as an important aspect to ensure that the resources are protected. So that is the basis of where this criteria came from. And it ended up at dictating who should be included. And it ended up at ensuring that there is either fair or unfair selection or inclusion of the research participants in the research teams. So very, very important in terms of the ethics in research. But another important aspect is that one of respecting the researchers. And I said these people were co-researchers, and this is an evidence of through taking some of the statements from the research report. It was required that the various members of the research teams should have an interest in the welfare of the catchment community, and that they should be able to take actions with a view to pursue tourism development. Look, and having interest in the welfare of the community is an important ethical contribution. The researcher would want those people to be included so that those involved and those who would participate in the research process would also benefit by ensuring that their welfare are taken care of, as well as the welfare of the greater community. This is the reason why we said in one of the workshops that at Chiheni, one of the research participants was instructed to continue to participate in the research process, and that he was instructed to always brief the council sittings so that then the participation of the community in the research process is broadened. And we do believe that the people that sat in the council represented the broader community. So the activities of the research filtered into the research community, so everybody could be affected. This has ensured that the welfare of the catchment community is taken care of, ethically correct in terms of research. Therefore, they were treated, these research participants were therefore treated as co-researchers and as autonomous and responsible agents with specific roles and responsibilities. Such roles and responsibilities were, among others, planning how the study should be conducted, including the development of action agenda and carrying out the research actions. Now, you could see that they are acknowledged and taken as the contributors and people that contribute to the development of themselves, their interests taken into account. This is very, very important in terms of the ethics. So the fair election and their respect, the extent to which they become co-researchers. Much social research necessitates obtaining the consent and cooperation of subjects who are to assist in investigations and of significant others, and of significant others in the institutions or organizations providing the research facilities. While some cultures may not be stringent about informed consent, in others, there are strict protocols of informed consent. You will remember I presented to you the protocol, the Chivenda protocol to be followed. It was just an example because I've got a background on it, I've done it. But if you go to the municipality, the protocol will also be there. And you go to any other culture, whether it is KZN, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, Gauteng, Mpumalanga, Free State, you see, there are various protocols depending on the culture of the people or the specific governance structure that is there in its policies. I will show you, I will repeat now and show you that that protocol actually complies with the ethical code of consideration in research. Other authors suggest that informed consent is particularly important if participants are going to be exposed to any stress, pain, invasion of privacy, or if they are going to lose control over what happens. And they put an example here in bracket as drug research. Such informed consent requires full information about the possible consequences and dangers. Later on, you will find that it is indeed also difficult to comply with all the ethical requirements because the circumstances and the research context do differ. And also, even where people do try to present all the information, it is also impossible to present all information. You can do a summary or you can present some, that which is important for those affected to know. We will talk about it at a later stage. And here is the protocol of gaining entry. This is the gaining entry process that was followed in an area, and it is about council meetings. And here we want to confirm the consent, if it is there and it is given by the people that are affected and those that are going to be role players in the research process. And during the council, tribal council meetings, it is said, however, it was reiterated that the community was allowed to make recommendations regarding any other objective that they would like to achieve through the study. In addition, to support from the leaders, strong supporters of the study were community members who were already pursuing tourism development projects and those who have participated in other developmental projects. So they immediately give consent and they immediately show that they approve of what is going to happen because they know that in similar studies they benefited in the past, or they immediately do grasp that because they are interested in tourism, and tourism has to do with economic development. When they hear that it is economic development is part and parcel of the objectives, then they think, yo, this is the opportunity that we've grabbed. So consent, because the study speaks to their interest. It does not show that it's going to oppose them. So immediately you get consent from the stakeholders or from the potential participants. And here is the protocol that we were talking about, that some cultures do have stringent protocols that has to be complied with. Then in the Chivenda protocol, you know what we've spoken about, that you have to be subjected to that. Otherwise, you don't get consent or approval. Your studies is not approved. So It's an example of a protocol that should be followed. In the municipality, there will be municipal, whether you have got to go and present to the municipal council, or you are required to meet the civics where studies is going to be conducted. It is dependent on the policies and the procedures that are followed as part of the protocol in the municipality. So we don't know if it is strict or not. I have not gone through via the municipality when I was conducting studies, but people who are working in the municipality should be familiar with it, or those that are conducting research in the municipality or have gained entry into the research sites under the municipality should have a good experience. And if you have it, please do share with us. But what does informed consent mean? It means that people are aware of what is going to, what they are going to come across, and they've got the rights to participate and the rights to withdraw. And it is, they can refuse to participate, or even if they've initially agreed to participate in the study, if they see that it doesn't go the direction that they want, or they see that it's going to detrimentally affect them, they can still withdraw in the process. That is the right that is accorded to participants. But another important aspect is that people should be competent, they should volunteer, they should be given full information, and that information, and they themselves should understand or comprehend what is going to be entailed or what the study entails. And here, all these things are presented here. Competence, what it means I am able to take decisions. And voluntarism, then I on my own, I'm not coerced by anybody. And full information that everything has been told and presented to me so that I can understand. So that is why here I say, during the initial meetings with the traditional leaders, the aim and objectives of the study were presented, were explained. And it means I ended there. I did not even detail methodology or whatever. I might have spoken about the methodology, because when you constituted research teams, you must indicate what their role will be and what they will do and how they should be constituted. At least I might have done that, although I did not document it down. But I'm indicating that you cannot present everything. You can just present part of the information that they should be able to know. So there is difficulty of complying with the full ethical requirements. Some of these are guidelines, but you need to behave in a way that you don't work on the rights of the people, or you don't overlook them. Even you can't do everything in one meeting. You can't do everything in one space. Please give it an opportunity. You're gonna stay sometimes in the field, and that is where the interaction and the relationship between the researcher and the participants is very, very important. Now, sometimes it is difficult. Sometimes it is difficult to secure consent. Other authors argue that the informed consent may not always be necessary, but that, as a general rule, the greater the risk, the more important it is that informed consent is gained. Other arguments are on the amount of information. We have said it is difficult to provide everything. Sometimes when you are conducting covert studies, where, say for instance, people should not see that you are conducting studies on them. If they see that you are conducting studies on them, remember, people can always change their behavior and pretend and do things that appease you, or they change from their day-to-day behavior. So in that way, then the studies is distorted, and the element of bias starts to infiltrate. So this is the difficulty of ethics. So you can study somebody without knowing that is being studied. So it's unethical. But you would not achieve the objective of the study if you inform him, because this is covert. This is overt studies. They must not see that you're studying them. Actually, especially in ethnography, I think so. And there is always power relations, in that there are people who will agree to be studied or to participate in the study, just because they see that a person who is an authority above them is actually wanting that to happen. In a school, when you want to gain consent, remember you get through the principals and through the teachers, but the students or the pupils that are part and parcel of the study don't give you consent. When they see that the principal has agreed or the teachers agreed, they just fall in. They just agree to be studied, but in their hearts, they are not interested on that. And that is why element of bias will be there, or they will misbehave during the process of data collection, and you don't achieve the objectives of the study. So this is the difficulty of ethics. Ethics is not a straightforward aspect, and it is subjective, as we have said. So the role of the researcher is very, very important. How you tread, how you navigate is dependent on you. And this is going to be my last slide, in which I want to demonstrate that there has been power relation between the community itself, not the researcher. So this is not the problem of the researcher, but the problem is the studies of the researcher and the community. The researcher did want to do it ethically. And you have seen this statement. It is the statement from the research teams at Chiaba, where the tribal leader, the traditional leader says, I want you to lead this research team and make a presentation on its behalf before the tribal council. You will need to make presentation on its behalf. You should therefore not absent yourself from the council meetings. Kosibone Chiaba mentioned this statement to Mr. Peter Mpolosi, a member of the Chiaba research team. Then, in response, Mr. Mpolosi says, yes, my leader, you know that I am faithful and will do as you instruct. It was Mr. Mpolosi. So he was saying it because the leader is more powerful and he's in charge of the village. And we were not sure if he was interested on doing what the leader was saying. But because the leader is in a position of authority, which is above him, then he agrees and he falls to it. And indeed, he was part and parcel of this research team until the end of the studies. I was with him every time, and he appears to have been the leader of this team. And when I had to organize field trips, transact works, and any other meeting, he was a point of liaison, and the study succeeded because he was there. But we're not sure if ethically in his heart he wanted to be part. So, but it was not the researcher who forced him to be part, but his traditional leader. So this is the reason why you can see different dimensions of ethics. And this is the reason why compliance with ethics is actually a challenge. And I said you stand in between what you need to achieve to achieve the objectives of study, but you also have to look at the interest of those that are affected. Here we saw a very different dimension.
So when you, towards the end, when you're talking about informed consent, something comes to mind. There are cases where harm can actually happen if, for instance, the names of the participant is exposed or yes, what they do is exposed. But how far can one go in convincing the process? I'm talking about, let's call it the gatekeeping process in ethical clearance, if I may, that the intention is not to disclose the names, meaning in such a case, you are assuring some form of protection, that harm can only happen if the names are disclosed. Is that good enough, or how does one navigate that kind of a situation?
Okay, thank you, Dr. Korombi. Abel, in terms of when you are applying for ethical clearance, there's certain forms that you need to submit. So some of those forms, it's almost like templates. So what is important is that maybe for your research, you need to identify the extent. So if it's going to be human participants, there's a risk grading that you need to complete. So in most cases, like the generalized, the general research studies that we do, whether it's quantitative qualitative, and so forth. In most cases, they fall under, I could be mistaken, risk 2 or category B, something like that. So just minimal risk. The only minimal risk there is maybe discomfort, if you are going to be participating over a long period of time, or maybe if you are questioning and so forth. So the other important aspect that you need to declare when you are applying for the ethical research is that you need to, like, if you are going to be collecting their name, how are you going to ensure that you prevent harm? So for example, there's what we call de-identification. I can't think of the proper word, but de-identification, meaning when you are doing the analysis, you de-identify them. So it will only be yourself and maybe your
pseudonyms.
No, but besides pseudonyms, like because the other thing is, besides the names, sometimes it can happen that maybe because you are collecting from a certain state institution or maybe a certain school, it would be possible to identify. So besides the anonymizing them, there's things that you need to remove to ensure that they are not going to be easily identifiable. But all of those things, they are part and parcel of the ethics clearance application. So whether maybe it's the gender, the area where they live, any type of identification, then you need to also include what steps are you going to so maybe naming them participant A, B, and C, and removing like D, almost like when you are redacting in copies, when you are doing a redacting purpose, a process in the paper, removing certain things that can easily identify them. Yeah, that's my contribution. Trusting I didn't lead you astray.
Okay, Abel, are you happy?
Yes, sir. Thanks. It helps. It helps to have an idea as to how to go through this.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, the actual form, you will see like various things, but after, with the interpretation, examples, coding, I see here, as Sakele mentioned, using code names, using say participant A, but sometimes in the actual, especially if you are when you're doing the data analysis, if there is going to be something else as well, like let's say maybe the institution, you are, SARS, ideally you need to, remove certain information that will easily identify that establishment or that community or those colleagues in a school.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. You see, I must confess, the UNISA process, although it appears difficult, is very comprehensive. And I think it might be helping to an extent that people would not take research for it. It's not a simple thing. By the way, I don't want to use these difficult things because people will run away from research. To me, research is not difficult because it has to do with the structure and the procedure and the approach. And you follow things that you are told, and there are guidelines. So this process of filling in or online or whatever, complying with the ethics is a guided process. The only thing is that it is difficult maybe to comprehend if you have to do it over and over and again or to master it. But all of you would go through it. You will pass the hurdle. But I want to say, I'm saying it because in other universities, I did not come across it. I've told you. And I'm telling you, you are saying sometimes we cannot use names or we need to use pseudonyms. I have never done that. You have seen in every aspect, particularly in participatory action research, that I did write names of the people. And these studies did go to external examiners who are not people from within the same institution. And nobody has ever queried that I've put names of the people there. And maybe I'm suspicious. I'm putting to show that they've done good things. Now, that is ethically correct. So it's on the positive note, and it benefits the participants themselves. So there is no breach of ethics code. Now, it is a supposition. But I'm saying, in the way that you put your statements, then if you demonstrate that indeed these are going to benefit. And if I say, when you take choices, you need to defend them. When you are writing about ethics, I know that you quote you cite some sources where you have found different statements. Then you can indicate the naming of the whatever. Other authors are saying you mustn't name them. But Kononani or Korombe has cited them. And on several occasions, his documents were passed. And you are demonstrating that for a good cause. And it does, you see, the university doesn't have to be rigid. And what you write, I tell you that it's not exactly what you're going to do in the field. What you do in the field is what you do. It determines, it actually is dependent on your values and your worldview.
I just want to make mention that although the ethical process, it might seem, labor intensive and so forth, but you get to really appreciate what you are going to be doing, because it almost feels like it's a different research proposal or something. I can't really explain it, but that those grilling questions, like what I posted here was like something relevant to what Abel asked about the personal identifiers. So it really makes you zoom into your work and really appreciate. It was quite very stressful, but at the end, it's rewarding. You get very rewarding, and that personal ownership to say, once I'm starting this, really, I'm ready to run. Thank you.
Yes, colleagues, thank you. Given the opportunity, Abel says, given the opportunity in the future, can we discuss this popular case study of research ethics of Lord Humphrey? And Abel, you owe me. Do you want to lead what you're proposing here, or what are you going to? You're going to lead something for us. We have agreed.
I have agreed, Doctor. I will have no choice but to do so. Well, I'm not good in doing this, but I can do the facilitation, Doctor, in terms of this. I see somebody put in here. By the way, my background is engineering, so social is such a foreign thing, but I'm learning for me. So.
No. Can you do, you present, Abel, you present the engineering ethics. Are you proposing the ethics here?
This one, by the way, okay, remember I'm doing two things here. This issue about discussing this case study is such an interesting, complex, I believe it's a complex case study, which when I read about it, it actually it divides the room, if I may call it.
Yes.
It divides the room. But it's important to know and understand where one is in terms of this divide. Hence, I wish to understand it, because it goes back to what you just mentioned towards the end, wherein what is considered unethical later on is kind of justified as, but if there was no consent sought, if consent was sought upfront, it would have not been approved, right?
Oh yes,
it would have not been approved, and there would have not been any other way to get information. In other words, it is more like if you know or basically think that it will not be approved, if you don't get permission, can you now go for apology?
So when do you want us to, can we schedule it for next month?
Yes, sir, that's fine. I will
But-
go, in fact, look deeper into it. I will bring it, sir. Yes, we'll do that next month.
But are you okay? Next month is next Tuesday. Are you gonna be ready on Tuesday, or you gonna want another day?
Not Tuesday. Maybe
Which
into
week?
maybe into the second or third week.
Okay, third
of the
week.
month. Second or third week of the month.
Okay, I've noted that one. We'll schedule it. You will see it coming. If you find that it is too close, even if the schedule is out, we can postpone it further. We can request extension from the center.
Yes, I will do that.
Thank you very much. And if there isn't anything further, I wanted to propose this. Abel, you are from the Department of Science and Engineering, and even Stanford is from the same department with you. Stanford will present the engineering perspective, quantitative wise. The two of you would. Then I was going to propose that we get at least a representative from each of the colleges, so that we can have an opportunity to have a sight, a view from those colleges in terms of what they can present. You are not forced to present what we're presenting here. Anything that has to do with research, which is your experience or things that you think we can look at, so that we can together engage on that concept and we can enhance our understanding on it. And I want to tell you, you don't have to master it. No, you can be a facilitator. We will come in because all of us are going to study it. For an example, this case that Abel is proposing, I'm going to study it. And when he is presenting, I'm part and parcel of his presentation. And all of you, I want you to do the same so that we are all the same. And when he facilitates, we're supporting him. That is how learning will happen. So in other words, because we are researchers, we're going to research it and engage on it. And we can say, no, this author should not have done this here. Or he should not have told us here, he should have done this. Or he has done good things. This is what we would like, we can use. But we read not only him, we read many more. So I'm requesting that some of the colleges have not been represented here. Colleagues, go in your various colleges, and I request that you represent yourselves. Am I getting an undertaking on this? Okay, thank you very much, colleagues. I think it was a wonderful engagement.
You're welcome, Doctor. Thank you, students. Enjoy your evening. Thank you to Doctor for your knowledge sharing with us again. Enjoy your evening till next week, Tuesday. Thank you.